So we got some more information on the Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, which is set to come out June 21st. There was a campfire interview with Hidetaka Miyazaki talking about the DLC, and we got some more information that we haven't heard previously. So I'm going to go over a bit of it here. So this is going to be their largest DLC yet. Now, we did kind of know that already, and it's exciting because if you've played any of the previous DLCs from Software's games, you'll know they are packed with content. Now, he did also say that the Shadow of the Erdtree will be the only DLC. Now, there was some previous speculation because he said that they are not leaving. They're potentially thinking about doing multiple DLCs. It was loosely translated, and that wasn't the case. I know there's a lot of people online saying yes or no to that, but I have a game theory that we'll be getting an Elden Ring 2 at some time in the future. But yeah, for this DLC, they say that it's going to be about the size of the second half of the game. So that is really great to hear because the second half of the game is huge. Now, when Hidetaka Miyazaki talked about Elden Ring at its first, before it came out, he said that it wasn't going to take that like 15 hours to complete. When the game itself, you can spend like 80, 100 hours and just barely get to the end with that if you're exploring everything. So he didn't want to comment on the length of the DLC, but it's roughly equivalent to the second half of the game. So you can view this on Campfire Camp, Zhihu, and we got some really interesting information regarding this. So, Shadow of the Erdtree is a large-scale DLC, and they were trying to fit some pieces from George R.R. Martin, who developed the story for Elden Ring. They couldn't fit it all into the main game, so those ideas are carried forward into the DLC. So it's not like we're getting something entirely like newly made up. Like this was intended whenever they released the game itself. So I think that that speaks to how quality the story is going to be. Another thing is this game, the base game had so much content to explore. There were so many characters, and Hidetaka Miyazaki even said that most of the characters from the base game will not be in the DLC, since he doesn't trust people not to take them out and kill them in the game. And that is fair because you see that very often. Although Elden Ring is a game that you can pop up a new game plus relatively easily, so yeah, that is kind of interesting. We're mostly going to be seeing new characters, and Saint Trina, who there's been some theories, maybe Mikola, but I don't know. From what it sounds like, they may also be two separate characters, but I guess we'll see when the DLC itself comes out. Now, Dark Souls has previously launched 2 or 3 DLCs, but this one is just going to be the one DLC. And they said that Elden Ring emphasized the exploration, and it really did. In the game, you're just overwhelmed with the amount of content. Like when you first land in Limgrave, you got so much to do there. Like there's just a whole slew of content. So the DLC is going to be similar. Instead of breaking it into parts, they're just going to lump it all together, and it'll have probably a similar feeling to the base game itself, where you can just explore and have that sense of adventure instead of having like chunk 1 here, chunk 2 here, chunk 3 here, which goes on to explain the price, because I've seen some people be like, what, it's $40? It's gonna be worth it. The previous DLCs from Software games were not as expensive, but they are also a massive, and I must say, From Software DLCs are better than a lot of real game, like full games. So we're going to be getting our money's worth for sure. Now, it's been more than 2 years since the original content of the game was released, and they are going to have a different leveling system. So because players had to beat Latern and Monger people this time, should already have a sense of the game, understanding the game. Generally speaking, since the second half the difficulty is relatively high, we also introduce a new level element in the DLC, allowing you to freely choose a challenge intensity. For example, if the player's level, the main body is already very high, he can choose to turn off growth and not upgrade in the new attribute to challenge the enemy. But if he feels that it's already difficult for him, he can continue to improve abilities and character strength. So we were previously told that there will be a separate leveling system, which I took as it's going to be something similar to Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, and a lot of other people were thinking something similar. So that is good to see that you do have the freedom to choose if you want more of a challenge. I myself, I like the challenge in Elden Ring, so yeah, we'll see what that all brings on. So there's going to be 8 new categories of weapons. This is we already knew when the DLC trailer dropped, and it's cool. I think that it's awesome they're adding in new weapons. I like the punching and kicking ones. They got some really interesting looking weapons that will be brought into the DLC. So not limited to the DLC and be brought to the main game. Obviously, we kind of knew that. So we can try to challenge the original bosses with the new weapons. It would be fun to go fist to fist and fight Horalu Warrior with some of the new fighting moves that we get with the... If you've seen the trailer, the kicking attack looks super cool. And I'm really curious about this guy. You see there, he's got a giant's head on his belt. He's got a symbol that's very similar to the symbol that's on Dung Eater's outfit. So I'm curious. And also, these guys got like similar to Malekith looking armor. So this is the biggest question mark for me. Fire Giant 2.0, the Wicker Giant from Berserk. I'm very curious to see what comes of this. But does the DLC have two goals? Back to the main question. So, similar to the main body, entering the DLC during the second round of the main body is equivalent to the difficulty level of the second round of DLC. Of course, there'll be many hidden elements, perhaps content that was not discovered in the first episode will give you new experiences in the second episode. So that's interesting to me. There may be some things from the first game that will impact into the DLC. So I think we're going to have our hands full. Miyazaki also said recently that there's still a small surprise that people haven't found in the base game of Elden Ring, which just speaks to the volume of content that is in that game. So mind-blowing, but this is the question here. How long is the DLC? And he doesn't want to speculate because, whenever he said that the base game won't take that long. Before release, I said in an interview it would take 30 hours to complete, and after it was revealed, everyone said I was lying. In fact, not enough at all. Not at all. As developers, we definitely continue to experience a game. We're too skilled, so the duration has no reference value. And that's a fair point. Like, if you're working on Elden Ring, you're going to know the mechanics to a T. And if you go in to play the game, you're going to know exactly where to go, what to do, and the best route to do that. So it's hard I would say, for a developer to get a good grasp on how long it will take. So as for the order to play, everyone can do it according to their preferences. There's no strict order. If anything, we recommend starting to experience the DLC after the second half of this chapter, and you can return to the chapter to complete the game. Because if you clear this chapter first, you will go directly to the second chapter, and there's no way to directly connect to the DLC. So that's a good point there. I'm very curious to see how it'll implement into the story. Maybe we'll get a new ending. I'm very curious. Will the DLC resolve any plot concerns or bring any new content? Some of the mysteries left by the main body will be answered. My biggest question is, what happened to Godwyn? He's like a fishy mermaid dude now. And what's going on with Saint Trina and Mikola? Like, those are the three major characters that I'm just curious what will happen. I cannot guarantee that overall through the DLC we'll have a deeper understanding of the world, game, and story. That's the thing that really strikes me as funny, because a lot of people are saying that we're going to get multiple DLCs, we're going to have the whole story. I don't think so. I think that we'll potentially down the road get an Elden Ring 2. Just look at how successful the game was. Would they not want to replicate that? It had massive sales. People love the game. People want more of it. So I do have a big theory that we will be getting an Elden Ring 2 at some point. Now, another thing that's interesting to note is that while they were making Sekiro, there's also a team working on Elden Ring, and some of the assets from Sekiro came over to Elden Ring, and you can kind of see some of the similarities in areas. Similarly, while they're working on Elden Ring, they were also making Armored Core 6. Amazing game, by the way. If you haven't played it, highly recommend it. But I do think that they may be working. They have this new game in development that people are talking about, Spellbound. Now, I do think that we may have an Elden Ring in development, Elden Ring 2 in development. This is just a theory. I'm just throwing it out there, but I am hopeful for it. So it's going to be curious to see what wraps up in this story, if we're still going to have questions about what happened, and where we're going with the story. So we hope to make people feel that the Land of Shadows and Borderland are physically separated sealed worlds. As for the part where the curtain disappears, it's not convenient to feel it yet. The reason why the broken shadow tree in the picture is designed a way to present the look and feel of this world where the will is distorted and gradually collapses. So very interesting. I'm curious to see what that means. Will there be new forces appearing in the DLC? Do the factions, articles such as Star and Two Fingers, have an influence on the Shadowlands? Depends on how you define power. Of course, there'll be new groups and on this basis, some of the organizations in this article will be further completed. Mesmer likely has some relation to Millennia and Mikola. I think that there could be, like, if you look at the butterflies, it just makes sense. And this is funny. They don't have many NPCs that will appear directly, will not return. The reason is if they're designed this way, there may be a situation when a character kills the NPC, causing him to unappear in the DLC. Some characters that we know indirectly, like Mikola, will definitely appear throughout the story. So Mikola being in the story, we kind of already knew from the pre-released information. They also asked about Mikola's water lily and Saint Trina's water lily. We all know Mikola, so it'll be a role in Saint Trina. The identities of Mikola and Saint Trina has caused a lot of discussion after release of the main game. They can be regarded as different existences, but we don't want to reveal the specific relationship yet, and we hope everyone can explore it on their own. Which can be said that Saint Trina will indeed appear in the DLC, and the relationship of the two will be further explained. That was kind of something we've already known, so it's good to get some confirmation that there will be an explanation for the relationship. I don't want to get too much into my theories, it's a whole other video. Will the ending chosen by the player have a direct impact on the narrative? The DLC is an independent experience, so the player's choice in this article will not affect the DLC story. As for the ending, there is a so-called end or end. Of course, the DLC will not have as many endings as the main body, but players will still have to face some choices during the game. That's interesting. Now, there's going to be multiple endings for the DLC potentially. That's good to know. Now, this is translated, so it's not going to be perfect, but yeah, that's nice to know. Prerequisites for the DLC is to defeat Radon and Moog. Defeating Moog is easy to understand after all the interested DLCs behind him. What's the setting for defeating Latern? From a plot perspective, players will have to understand after experiencing the DLC, so there'll be no spoilers here. Interesting. I'm curious to know what that means, but I feel like there is some answers to the questions that we have here, but there's also a lot of just leaving it up for our own interpretation when we play the game. That's what's beautiful about Elden Ring. It's the first and last DLC. We have no plans to add more content to Elden Ring, but it has not been decided whether the story of Elden Ring will be the focus. From Software style doing things generally does not allow the future IP to be easily locked, but it's better to leave some possibilities. But as far as Shadow of the Erdtree, it's the only DLC. That's sad, but I also think it's a good thing. As I said, it could potentially be a continuation of Elden Ring someday. Since we talked about future possibilities as far as you're concerned, the next film, what stories would you like to tell? It's hard to answer this question because of my identity. If I talk about it now, it will be spoilers. In addition, my habit of making games is to think and create at the same time. There's so many variables at stage, I can't too much answer. Makes sense. I don't think he wants to give away too much of his cards because there's a lot coming. This is a really long article, but we're just getting to the very end of it here. Since lots of Demon Souls, many Souls-based games, not produced by From Software, has been released on the market. Has he tried similar works from other manufacturers? That's interesting. I just beat another Crab's Treasure yesterday. Playing Stellar Blade, played Lies of P, played Lords of the Fallen, enjoyed most of them. I've actually not defined the so-called Souls system. I often play this type of game myself, of course, as a player. I'd be very happy to play some games of this type. There are a lot of commendable contents in them, and I learn a lot from the creator. This is a great opportunity. When we first released Demon Souls, we followed the trend of the times and developed some that met users' expectations. We and other developers joined, explored, and studied each other, and the purpose was the same: give players a better gaming experience. And I love that. That's the way that gaming should be. Like, trying to make games better, not just for money, but to make players' experiences better. Finally, what would you like to say to players who are looking forward to Shadow of the Erdtree? As we develop games, we don't actually consider it for a certain cultural circle. Instead, we create games for players who like our works. I'm very happy that my game is loved by Chinese players. Next, I invite you to experience the DLC for yourself. Enjoy the joy of combat, experience of fun exploration. Super excited for the DLC, and it's really nice to get some of our questions answered here. So let me know in the comments below what you think will happen in the Elden Ring DLC, what your future thoughts are for the Elden Ring series, and as always, thank you so much for watching. If you found this video fun, please hit the subscribe button below. I'll see you in the next one.